Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back to the Counterculture Podcast. I'm here with my husband, Grant.
What's up, guys?
And today we're going to be interviewing my brother, Dylan.
Hey guys.
So let's just go ahead and get started.
All right. I'm
Sounds
excited
great.
to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, this is so
Absolutely.
fun. So to get started, you kind of want to just say what you're doing in life, what you're into, kind of a little bit of a background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the process of medical school. I am a fourth year medical student. And so I've pretty much been in school for over a decade now. I like to say that I'm a 22nd grader at this point. So I've been in school for a while. But went to Liberty University for undergrad. And then I'm currently, as I mentioned, a fourth year medical student. And the plan is to kind of pursue a family medicine residency. Hopefully that'll start in July. So that takes up most of my time on my free time. I like to do anything fun, hiking, camping, fishing, playing pickup soccer. So it's a little bit about me.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
To catch everyone up. Yeah.
So what are you doing like right now? What is the step that you're in?
Yeah. So I'm kind of in a
Mm.
fun season. Typically every month in medical school, you go through different rotations. And so right now I am technically on my research rotation. So I have a paper that's due at the end of the month, but other than that, I have all this time off, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So I'm also right in the middle of interview season, so got interviews pretty much lined up, virtual, but back to
Mhm.
back like every day. So have social
Wow.
nights, typically the night before the interview, and then interviews in the morning. Today's one of the first days I haven't had an interview in the past two or 3 weeks,
Mhm.
so it's been kind of nice. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. And then at some point, I need to figure out this research paper that I'm going to be writing on.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's
Do you
so
have any kind of thoughts or ideas of the research paper you're going to write, or just
Yeah,
nothing right now?
yeah. So around this time last year, I did a pediatric rotation, and I loved the doctor who I was with, and she offered to like preceptor the patient that we saw together. She offered for me to write the paper, and she would like look over it and grade it and things like that. So that was kind of like this rare mitochondrial disease from this patient that we saw. And then I was with her 2 months ago, and we also saw like some other interesting cases. We're trying to work out the details right now of what we're gonna write the paper on, but it looks like right now, there's a newborn that we saw that was pretty severely jaundiced, which just means that very yellow, has some elevated bilirubin levels, and was kind of an undifferentiated case. We don't really know why the baby was that yellow. So she is actually getting the paperwork today to see if we can get enough information to write about. If we
Mhm.
don't, we'll have to change topics. But tentatively, that's what I'll be writing about.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
That's
yeah,
so cool.
yeah.
So do you know what you want to go into after you're done with, all of your residency and stuff?
Yeah,
I know
I feel like I'm on a
that's
I
the
feel
big
like I'm on
question.
my interview because I feel like everyone always asks during the
Yeah.
interview, they're like 10 to 15 years down the road, where would you see
Yeah.
yourself?
hmm
And
That's just a
so,
generic question that like everyone wants to know.
yeah. So what I've been saying is, and what I've thought since high school is, I love sports medicine. There's a really cool combination between family medicine and sports medicine, I think, because family medicine has all the chronic conditions, diabetes, hypertension, and things
Mhm.
like that, which is really tied into the medicine that we learn over 4 years. But then what interests me about sports medicine is it's your weekend warriors. It's the people who come in with really acute complaints and they want to get better. So they
Yeah.
come in with like one problem, you tell them a couple things, and then you see really
Mm.
quick results.
Yeah.
So I like that balance of having like chronic complex patients, but then also acute patients. So
Yeah.
to kind
Yeah.
of full circle answer your question, after residency, you can subspecialize. And so I want to subspecialize in sports medicine.
Okay.
So I have that training. And then after that, I would like to, work under some like hospital system for a couple years and like really understand how to be a doctor.
Mhm.
And then 10, 15 years down the road, I think it would be really cool to have like my own practice and work where I see 50% family medicine patients, 50% sports medicine patients, and
Yeah.
maybe cover like a local high school team or something on my
Yeah.
free time.
Very
That
cool.
would be
So
so cool.
Very
yeah,
cool.
it'd be cool to be at like cover like a local team that, I grew up around. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what does that look like as far as the residency to do family medicine and sports medicine?
yeah, so residency programs, they're very different depending on what specialty you go into. Like if I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, they have like a 7 to 9 year residency program.
Wow.
Yikes.
So, you're 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, and then 9 years of residency. It's like half your life, it feels like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
I'm blessed with family medicine because it's only 3 years. That's the shortest, I think, of any residency that I know of. So it'll be 3 years of family medicine. And then after that, I mean, you're a doctor when you become a resident, but you're a
Mhm.
doctor in training.
Yeah.
But after residency, you're an attending, you're like a physician. And so I could work 10 years and then go back to do fellowship, or I could do
Mhm.
it right afterwards.
okay.
I would say 99% of people go straight from residency to their fellowship. So it would just look like after residency, applying for a fellowship, doing interviews kind of like I'm in now for residency.
Mhm.
And then once I get a sports medicine fellowship, finishing that out. I think most programs have changed from 1 to 2 years down to 1 year, so it would just be 1
Okay,
additional year, so a total of kind of 4 years post-doctor training,
Mhm.
gotcha.
so
That's so
yeah.
cool. So I guess that kind of explains the step you're on right now in your journey,
Mhm.
but I'm kinda curious, like, I wanna get into, like, our childhood and, like, how that shaped, like, you becoming a doctor or choosing to go down that path.
Yeah.
But obviously we grew up together, we're brother and sister. Would you say there was, like, a moment in your life where you were like, "Ooh, I wanna be a doctor," or did it just kinda happen?
No, I hated science growing up.
Yeah.
And then, like, everyone
Wow.
told me I say everyone, like, 3 or 4 people close to me, like mom and everyone always said I was gonna be an engineer. Like,
I don't
math came
remember
easy
that.
to me, and I
Mm,
I liked math, and
Yeah.
I still like it. And then it was 11th grade, this is what I tell this is, like, my story. It was
Mhm.
11th grade, and I took general chemistry, which is, like,
Oh,
such a
yeah.
crazy class to fall in love with, but I fell in love with it, and, for better or for worse, I'm just extremely curious. I'm curious about everything in
mhm,
Mhm.
life. When I took general chemistry and I saw, like, all these microscopic things that we already know so much about, but there's still so much to learn, that kind of piqued my interest in science in general, and then praying about it a lot, there was an opportunity for me to do, like, a pre-med program as I dual enrolled at community college in my senior year of high school.
Mhm.
And I remember praying about it a lot because there was 2 different routes I could go. There was a pre-med track in this community college, and there was also an engineering track. And I remember the engineering track was, like, exactly what I wanted. It was
mm,
Mhm.
comfortable for me. It was what I thought was interesting. And so I almost applied for that. And as I was praying about it a lot, I felt like I should do this pre-med track. I didn't want to. I thought about all these excuses like I don't know science. I mean, other than just that general chemistry class, I don't like it. And then I remember sitting there at the kitchen table, like the last day before I had to make up my mind. And I was like, if I did this engineering course and like ended up doing that route, there would always be the what if. Like
Mhm.
maybe I wasn't listening to God. I felt like God was maybe pushing me in this other direction. And I always say it's the biggest disconnect between like what I physically wanted to do
Mhm.
versus what I felt my spirit was calling me to do. And so I was like, I can't justify doing what I want to do. And so the way I rationalize it is like, well, it'll be a year. I'm still in high school. If I don't like these classes, I'll feel fine going to do
Yeah.
engineering or whatever. So I signed up for the pre-med program and then, I had really good professors that were great. And I was taking anatomy and physiology, medical terminology. And literally within the first 2 weeks, I was like, oh, this is like what I'm called for. This is
Oh,
like
that's so
exactly what
wow.
I
cool.
love. And even from then, like we had an orientation class and they asked, like, where do you want to be in 10 years?
Mhm.
And I found out about a sports medicine doctor and like wrote my paper on that. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do.
That's
That's so cool.
super cool.
I do
Yeah.
remember growing up, like, you only ever said you wanted to be, like, 2 other things growing up, but then once you found out about being a doctor and, like, kinda took that plunge,
Mhm.
you never changed your mind, and it's been,
Yeah.
like,
What
what,
were the other
15
two? A
years?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
dentist. I feel like I bounced that around for like a couple weeks, maybe.
I don't know, maybe you said you wanna be, like, a professional soccer player?
Yeah. At one point, that was definitely an interest.
Yeah.
And then
Like, lawn care maybe? Or you had your
yeah, I mean,
business?
I had a lawn care business. I don't know if I wanted to do that long
Yeah.
term, but I feel like right when I was thinking around 11th, 12th grade, I bounced around the idea of a dentist for a little bit,
mm,
I remember that.
not even for anything other than it seems like a balanced lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't say that was a really big interest, but I did like consider it for a minute.
Mhm.
But
That's so
but yeah,
cool.
since then I feel like it has been medicine. And everyone says once you start medical school, like you're gonna change so many times. And so
mm,
I really did like throughout this whole process that I'm still currently in, try to keep an open mind and it's been pretty consistent so far, but
Mhm.
I do always preface it with like, I don't know the future and I don't like to speak in absolutes. So things could change.
yeah.
Like I might not still pursue a sports medicine fellowship. I might. I still think I will. I thought that since I was 16, but
Mhm.
at least right now, those are like that's the thought. That's the
Yeah.
path that I'm taking.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So, being a self-proclaimed 22nd grader, what do you think is the hardest single year of school you've been through yet?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what I found, like, kind of going through from high school to community college to undergrad to medical school, you're always like picked up and put in these different pockets of people and professors and things like that. There's pros and cons. I remember at community college, some classmates were kind of interested in their education, most of them weren't. And it was very broad. Then I went to undergrad and found a little bit more people similar to me, but still a lot of people that weren't. And then medical school, like now everyone's interested in medicine, but different paths in medicine.
Mm,
I would say the rewarding part about all those things is like you find people closer and closer to your interest the more
Mhm.
you specialize. So that kind of offset the hardness because you have
okay.
people to relate to. But I would say the hardest part was probably first year medical school
Okay.
because of the workload. Like
Mhm.
our school was specific or unique in the fact that we had mandatory in-person classes, which most medical schools are online for 80,
Oh, okay.
90%. And we had to
Wow.
be in person. And I'm just not an auditory learner. So I don't learn great by sitting in a lecture. And so to be in lectures from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then try to come home and study everything you
Mhm.
learned was kind of hard. But then the other hard part was our school is unique in the fact that we have anywhere from 2 to 5 exams per week. And so in the first couple years of medical school, that's pretty much all you do. I think we totaled almost 200 exams in 2 years.
Oh my goodness,
So
dude.
Wow.
it's just like my friends joke, it's just like pump and dump. You
Mhm.
pump all
Yeah.
that information in your brain, dump it on the test, take like a 2 hour break, and then you pump for the next 24 hours all that new information. I think that it's paid dividends looking back on it, but definitely a challenging part because, it just felt like there was never much of a break throughout those first
Yeah.
couple years of medical
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, for sure. I remember you doing that just exam after exam. That is just brutal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What would you say is, like, a huge misconception with medical school? Just, like, as a whole? Like, someone who's wanting to go into medical school,
Uh,
and they're just something that maybe they don't know or something they think, but it's definitely not true.
That's a great question. Honestly, I feel like most of what I heard was pretty accurate.
Really?
Like, people told me when I first went into medical school, they're like, "You get to choose one thing
Mhm.
outside of medicine because you don't have time to do, like, everything else. You get to choose one thing that you do on your free time." And that
Oh,
was
okay.
definitely the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions to each rule, but really it was school like 90% of the time, and on my
Mhm.
downtime, like, I chose to spend it with family, playing pickup soccer once in a blue moon, but that wasn't even my, like,
Yeah.
big thing that I did. Yeah, I feel like most things that I heard about medical school, everyone says you're drinking, water from a fire hydrant for 2
Mhm.
years. Definitely agree with that. I guess the biggest misconception is, like, it's impossible and it takes a special type of person to go to
Mhm.
medical school. It doesn't. I would say I'm not a great learner, I'm not a fast learner, I'm not a smart person by nature. Like, I've still been through most of my classes and got through them. I think that
Yeah.
what it takes is just someone who, like, is willing to just sit down and do the work. I heard a quote from Bob Ross, and he said someone came up to him while he was painting, and this guy came up and he's like, "Man, I'm just not talented enough to paint." And Bob Ross looked at him and he goes, "That's baloney." He said, "Talent is a pursued interest."
Yeah.
And that was
Wow.
the first time I heard that, and I like that
That's
quote. But
good.
It's a great quote.
yeah, like, you can't anyone can say, like, "I can't do this," or I can't do this."
Mhm.
Like, I feel like I had so many doubts in my mind when I started medical school, and there's nothing special about me. There's, like, absolutely nothing. If anything, I feel like I'm a slow learner, it takes me longer, but, like, anyone can do it. It's just,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm interested in it, and that's what I choose to pursue. So,
Yeah.
if you're interested in something, I think that
Mhm.
if you set your mind to it, you can do it. So,
Yeah,
cool.
would you say there's any, like, maybe anyone famous or even anyone just, like, in your personal life that you looked up to that influenced your decision to become a doctor?
To become a doctor.
Mhm. Or even just how you pursue, like you just said Bob Ross said this thing, like,
Yeah.
is there anyone that you looked up to that were like, "Oh, that influenced you to make that decision?"
I'm motivated by people that, like, just work hard because that's kinda my persona. Like, I don't think that there's I think I learned very quickly that there's nothing that I have that's special, but I feel
Mhm.
like anything, like I said, that you set your mind to, you can do. So
Yeah.
people that are just very hardworking by nature, I look up to,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I know, like, Cristiano Ronaldo, I really respect his work
Mhm.
ethic. I
Yeah.
think he's
For
a really
sure.
great example. He's almost 40 now,
Yeah.
and he's still, like, playing competitive soccer. And even looking through his whole career, like, people said when he started at Manchester United, they would show up to the field trying to beat him to the field, and he would
Mhm.
already be there in a full sweat.
That's cool.
Yeah, like some of the famous basketball players and things like that. You hear
Right.
that story
Yeah,
about him.
totally. That's Kobe mentality.
Yeah, exactly like Kobe, but, I'm interested in soccer and it applies to soccer. So
Mhm.
him,
Mhm.
but no, we didn't really have anyone, like, in the medical field or, like, that were doctors that we grew up
Yeah.
around.
What
I
about Ben Carson?
you're exactly right. I really do like him. I respect his approach in life. I like his
Mhm.
calm demeanor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really did like him. When we watched Gifted Hands, like, I watch very
Mhm.
few movies, but I loved that movie about
Yeah.
Gifted Hands and watching him.
That's cool.
Yeah, and his story is really cool, and I think, like, personifies the hard work because his mom, who's illiterate, made him
Mhm.
and his brother read 2 books a week, write book reports every week on those 2 books,
Yeah.
and then she couldn't even read the report.
Yeah.
She would just act like she did, grade it, and then, like, have him read another 2 books. And if you
Wow.
read his, like, story, that's exactly what kind of motivated him into medicine. Is he's reading about everything under the sun and then just kind of, like, spun into medicine because of the exposure that he got there. Stories like that I think are really motivating.
That's cool.
Anyone else? I mean, I've had really great professors and really great doctors that I've been exposed to as I've kind of gone through this process. I don't think anyone before that kind of like got me interested in it. Yeah.
I wanna talk about growing up homeschooled and, like, how if that at all, like, influenced your decision and, like, why you chose the career you did or, like,
Uh-huh.
maybe just hobbies and sports. I feel like that'll be a good segment to just kind
That'd
of,
be
like,
fun.
see your thoughts on being homeschooled as opposed to public school.
Yeah. I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved the flexibility that we got, like when we played soccer, we had soccer on Friday nights. And if we wanted to, like I mentioned before, like I was really big into soccer. I still am. I like watching soccer and playing it. But
Mhm.
like at one point, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And so when we had games on Friday nights, like I couldn't focus on school for
Yeah.
hours before the game.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to practice, I wanted to
Mhm.
get all my techniques. And so if I didn't want to do school on Friday, I would just take my whole Thursday and do both days,
Yeah.
And that's the flexibility that I don't think you get at
For
public
sure.
school.
Yeah.
So I love the flexibility. Yeah, looking back, I don't think I would have wanted to go to public school.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The one thing that I wish was different was in our city that we grew up in, we weren't allowed to play public sports.
Yeah.
That changed the year I graduated. But we
Oh,
had good
wow.
I
exposure
remember that.
with homeschool sports. Like we were very blessed to be in an area that has like a
Mhm.
homeschool sports league, which is not common. And then we were able to be on a homeschool travel team, which was nice. But I would have liked to play like competitively with my peers in public schools and things like that.
For sure.
That we didn't have the opportunity to. But I would say that would be like maybe the only downside
Yeah.
that I could think of.
Did y'all play other Christian schools?
Other Christian and private schools.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
unfortunately, the way that it showed up is they were all scrimmages, like scrimmages. For us, it
Man.
was like a real game. Like we would count it as a real game. But the 10 or 12 games that we had in our travel season, they were all scrimmages for these other private and public schools or Christian schools.
Mhm.
And then for some reason, I don't understand how this worked, but when we actually went to a tournament, we were officially in that tournament. So when
Hmm.
we played like a regional tournament or when we went to states, that counted. But
Yeah.
any game in the regular league was just a scrimmage.
The con being sports maybe, and then the pro is being just a flexibility, but
Yeah.
I can't really speak on that because I was also homeschooled, but I'm curious from you being, like, from a public school, what the experience was for you, like, what would you say a pro was in that area and, like, maybe a con,
Yeah,
if you
so
can
I
think?
didn't go to public school. I
Okay.
went to private school.
Yeah.
But still, I went to an actual school building.
Yeah.
We did have a schedule. I didn't get to experience any of that flexibility until my senior year when I had all the credits I needed to graduate. So in my last semester, I was off after lunch break. I had lunch break and then I had like 3 study halls in a row. So on the days where I didn't have a bunch of extra work to do, I was allowed to leave early. And so I really, really liked that.
Mhm.
At 18 or I guess 17 at the time, but I'm driving myself to school and, I was able to go work or go to the lake or whatever after school was out. And I only had to be back for baseball practice at 3 o'clock. I really liked that
Mhm.
flexibility. So I think that is something I would have really liked if I was homeschooled.
Yeah.
Something that I did like about Christian school, I guess just getting out of the house. I'm very extroverted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a homebody.
Yeah.
The home is where you sleep and it's where you
It's
hang out when you're
crazy.
not hanging out somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not my first choice.
All the introverts are cringing right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
no, that's just how I am. I want to be out,
Yeah.
I remember at 17, I was just bored out of my mind. I would literally drive to the mall at like 10 a.m. to walk around because I didn't want to be
Oh
home.
my
I
I just
love
wanted to
that.
be out, not necessarily at the mall, but somewhere. So being in a school building with all of my peers, especially, all my inner circle, the
Mhm.
guys, the team pretty much every day, 5 days a week, that was great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I loved that part of it. Y'all, I wouldn't say y'all were sheltered at all. I mean, you had
Yeah.
dance, y'all had music classes growing up, choir from your
Yeah.
church and your school, you had soccer and sports. So I wouldn't consider y'all like a sheltered homeschooler,
Mhm.
but definitely different than being in a school building all day, every day.
100%. Do you want to talk about what you liked about homeschool? Like,
Yeah.
I think we talked about it a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
curious what you thought.
I was gonna say for me, I definitely loved it. I was gonna ask you guys what you would do, like, maybe with your future kids,
Mhm.
but for me growing up, I loved it. I definitely loved the flexibility of it, and that's why I was gonna ask you, like, if you thought it changed anything with the career path that you chose.
Mm.
I definitely feel like it did for me because it really makes you more, like, independent when you're homeschooled.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just the style that my parents chose to teach us or not, but when we got into, like, ninth or 10th grade, we kind of just did it ourselves, like, we
Mhm.
learned from other people, we had, like, video learning, and we started doing dual enrollment in 11th grade. It was very much kind of in our hands, and I think we just took it and kind of enjoyed it and ran with it, and we were like, "Okay, what classes do we need to, like, start dual enrollment?" And it was more of a fun thing, and it made us more independent in that area. So I
Mhm.
definitely loved that, and I definitely think that that made a difference in, like, the career that I chose because because I definitely wanted to be, like, independent, but I was curious, like, about public school. I think that I would have enjoyed just going to one class and then, like, sitting down and just learning that for a while versus, like, for me, I would sit down in the morning and have, my 8 different subjects and kind of be scatterbrained and had to figure
Yeah.
out just, like, 1 hours for science, 1 hours for math. So in a way, I feel like it was helpful. In a way, I think it would be easier to do it in public school.
Yeah.
But I definitely enjoyed it. I don't think I would change it, but I am curious, like, what do you think you would do with your kids?
I would like to homeschool. Like, I think that
Yeah.
would be really cool.
Yeah.
I would definitely want to see like what my spouse thought and like have that
Mhm.
discussion and decision together. But if it was up to me alone, then I think it would be really cool to homeschool the kids.
Yeah.
But
Do you think your faith plays into that, or do you think it's just, like, the system that you like? Like, you would want your
no,
kids to
both.
choose
I
that?
mean, I
Mhm.
definitely feel like public school has gone into a direction where,
Yeah.
faith can't really be talked about in the schools. And
Right.
then you have a lot of agendas that are being pushed on your kids
Yeah.
that you might not agree with, that I personally don't agree with. So I feel like as your kids are growing up, those are fundamental years that shape your kid's future.
Absolutely.
sure.
And so I would want the values of the family to be reflected on the children, not someone else's values or
Mhm.
a government's values or a culture's values implemented into my kids. I would
Right.
want to make sure like I'm raising them how I feel like is the most beneficial to them. So that'd
For
be a
sure.
huge aspect of why I would want to homeschool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I work with people who are openly and outspokenly not Christian,
Mhm.
but they're to a point where they're not willing to send their kids to a public school anymore because they've gotten so crazy,
Yeah.
just woke and pushing agendas that don't need to be pushed. You have your kids exposed to so many crazy new ideas that none of us agree with so early. And I feel like it kind of just robs them of their childhood
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
they're going to come home and ask questions at 8, 9, 10 that I didn't want to have to answer until they were 13, 14,
Mhm.
and I don't think that's fair to them to expose them to that. Also, I don't think it's right in general. So, but also, I don't know if I'd be willing to send my kids to a private Christian school after a certain point. I think I went to the school that I went to at the perfect time where it was growing and super healthy, but not so big that things get swept under the rug. And I haven't been there in a long time. I'm sure it's a fantastic school, but that's just the nature of things is when things get so big, it's much easier for them to get out of control.
Mhm.
When you have a smaller school, it's an intimate group. I mean, I graduated in a class of 9, and that was the biggest class,
I
or
was the smartest and the dumbest person in my graduating
that's
class.
fantastic. You're valedictorian and the dunce cap at the same time. Yeah,
But yeah,
I think it's definitely a discussion that we're gonna have to have down the road when we have kids, and then 5 years later when that first kid's actually
Yeah.
ready to go to school. But I guess that's kind of how I'm leaning right now, just off the cuff.
Mhm.
mhm.
I am curious though your thoughts and then also yours on, a lot of people say like you should send your kid to
Mhm.
public school as a Christian so that it strengthens their faith and that it makes them more equipped, for the world. Do you agree with that or do you think that you should homeschool your kid to keep them away from all of that because it's the parents' responsibility?
No, there's veins of that I agree with, and then portions that I don't. So I think the part that I agree with is I don't want to raise my kid to believe exactly what I believe, and them not have any rationale of why they believe it,
Mhm.
just because
Mhm.
dad believed it or just because mom believed it. The Bible says that you need to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, and like, what
Mhm.
does that mean
Yeah.
if you're not actually digging deep in the Word and actually like pursuing it on your own, not just
Mhm.
listening? I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes. What if someone was an atheist and that's how they raised their kid? I wouldn't want their
Mhm.
kid to grow up not thinking about anything else but atheism. So with Christianity, I want to make sure that my kid has those thoughts on their own. But
Yeah.
in the same vein, in your formative years of learning from adults, it's your child, you don't know
Mhm.
right from wrong. I think establishing them with core truths and core principles and then allowing them to like make decisions as they get older would be
Mhm.
important. The part that I agree with is, yeah, I think there is an aspect where kids need to kind of get exposed to things, but
Mhm.
at 6
Yeah.
versus like 16 is a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
Totally.
That was part of the reason when I was praying about it. I went to Liberty, like it's a completely Christian
Mhm.
college. I loved it. But as I was praying about it, I was accepted to a couple different medical schools, and that was one of them. And I
Mhm.
loved it. I thought it would be easy. I thought it would be comfortable. I knew a lot of friends that were going there. But as I was praying about it, I felt like I should go to the school I'm at now, which is a secular school, which is
Mhm.
99% of most medical schools. At that point, I felt like I was establishing my faith. I felt like it would be, there are multiple reasons why I chose that school, but one of them was after praying about it, I felt like that would stretch my faith a little bit. And
Mhm.
I don't want to be sitting in a cookie cutter, easy, comfortable environment my whole life
Right.
because I don't think we grow that way.
Mhm.
I think that at some point as Christians, we need to, branch out. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
at 6, at 5, at 10,
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be a great decision.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you the same question.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have any original thoughts. Dylan kind of stole all mine. It was just really good.
So
Thanks.
you
Yeah,
or
definitely beneficial in your younger years, like Dylan said. It's just not something that you need to be exposed to at 4, 5, 6,
Mhm.
or even earlier than that. Preschool age is 4 years old.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's public schools all over the country, not all of them, but some of them they're having, drag queens reading story time to preschoolers.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Mhm.
I don't know. I want to be fair to public schools. I don't want a public school to have to be an outwardly Christian school because it's a public school. There's
Mhm.
different ideas. We're not put on this earth to force our, beliefs down people's throats.
Right.
So I feel like a public school is supposed to be a neutral school. That's
Mhm.
what it's supposed to be. There's not supposed to be all of these ideas on this shelf and then just none of the others.
Mhm.
And so I think, like you said, younger years, maybe shelter them some, and then however the Lord sees fit to teach you to do it, slowly expose them to these things. Because as soon as you're 18, if you move out, then you have
Mhm.
no clue why you believe what you believe. You've just been told yes or no all your life. So I like the way that my parents did it and your parents did it, saying study these things out. Just like the Bible verse says, study to show thyself approved.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
one you mentioned, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. At some point you need to start making those ideas for yourself. So I am more hesitant now than maybe a parent would have been 20 years ago
Yeah.
because there's so many new ideas paired with a culture that won't allow someone to be neutral. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if just kids of this generation will be stronger because of it or we'll lose more would be Christians because of it.
Mhm.
I don't know where that line is. It is scary for me as a prospective parent one of these days.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be willing to send my kid into that environment
Yeah.
with those ideas.
Well, and I know we're talking right now about public school, but I don't think the question is binary in terms of like they're sheltered or they go to public school and they're not. Like there's so many other ways that you
Definitely.
can have a kid exposed to different thoughts and different ideas. Like
Yeah,
kids that play with their
Mhm.
neighbors are not going to have the same thoughts as you do.
absolutely.
Kids that go to play rec sports, there's not going to have the same ideas that you do. There's so
Mhm.
many different avenues to have that. It doesn't have to be like public school or
Mhm.
they're going to be
Right.
extremely sheltered at home.
Yeah.
Like I know we're talking about public
Yeah.
school, but I feel like there's also a ton of different
Mhm.
ways that you can get that outside of one of those two options.
Mhm.
I think as a parent, it's up to you to shape your child's life and essentially their future. And if you send them into a public school like you were describing as a neutral place, you're setting them up for failure.
Well, if it was a neutral place, I don't think that it is.
Mhm.
I think that's what it's supposed to be, and that's what it's not. That's why I don't think I would send our kids to public school.
Yeah, I think that our parents did a really great job. Our mom would always remind us of the scripture verse, raise your children up in the right way, in the ways of the Lord, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. When they're young, you might depart from it because you're not fully equipped. And I don't think, a child isn't equipped to go out into the world and to be strong in their
Mhm.
faith as a 4 or 5-year-old. They're
Mhm.
very easily influenced. And so I just think sending them into a place where even a strong Christian, it would be hard to maintain your faith. Yeah, you're definitely just setting them up for failure. Our mom would always tell us the heart behind what she did, and I
Uh-huh.
think that helped a lot
Mhm.
because instead of just homeschooling us and saying we're always going to be homeschooled, and we never really know why. And if she didn't know why, she would say, I'm using discernment. I don't have a reason, but the Lord's given us discernment, and that's why I'm doing this. And so we wouldn't always have the reason, but if there was, we would always know about it. And then she
Mhm.
would let us choose. She never like made us be homeschooled. Every single year, I remember her asking us, like, do you want to go to public school? Is that a conversation you want to have? And then if I think I was the one, or maybe it was Clayton that
No,
was
it was Clayton.
closest to going to public
It was
school.
Clayton.
And she would always just explain the heart behind it.
The other thing I was going to add to your point about like having the schools should be more of a neutral place.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like they definitely should. Like I feel like my mind goes back to when we watched Little House on the Prairie and they would go to school and they would learn math, English, history. Like there was no culture that they were learning.
Yeah.
There
It's
was no like
true.
religion that they were learning. That was
Right.
the church and that was the home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you went to school for your like basic education.
Mhm.
So to Grant's point, like if public school was that, where it wasn't enforcing ideologies and enforcing specific cultures on people, I would
Mhm.
like 100% be open to that. They
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
other kids their age they could learn with and things like that. But when you have the like current culture interwoven their ideas, that's the ideas should come from
Mhm.
the family,
Yeah.
from like the
Exactly.
household. Yeah.
And I think if it was still like that in public school, there would be nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and we see public schools nowadays. I mean, the one that was nearest where I went to school in the same county had 2 or 3,000 students. Do you think a school that big can have a neutral culture? Do
Yeah.
you think it's possible?
It'd be hard.
And do you think it's directly related to the size or maybe to modern technology? Because I can't
Just
really
both.
decide.
Definitely both.
Yeah. I feel like when you have that many people in a school, you're going to have just that many more opportunities for diverse ideas, ideas that you agree with, disagree with, are neutral about. But then also you have such a polarizing culture surrounding it, being, quote unquote woke and cancel culture, where you're not allowed to not have an opinion. So there's no such thing as neutral. And then you have to have an opinion on all of these things
Mhm.
that in, the little house on the prairie example, you just wouldn't even hear about. I don't know if that's the size and the technology or one or the other or both,
Mhm.
but I don't think you could have a school today at all, big or small, that was
Mhm.
as neutral as it used to be.
Yeah, and also schools are just, in my opinion, framing this life of they're trying to separate the family, and so, kids are in school all day, just like a 9 to 5, way longer than they should be. They're getting all of their teachings at school. The
Mhm.
parents have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
In most cases, the parents are at work all day. The kids, they wake up, they leave the house, and then they see their parents for dinner.
Mhm.
They're stressed out, and then they go to bed. I think that it's more important than ever for a family to stay a family. Being homeschooled is a really I think it really equipped us well, like, for this world. I don't feel like we were sheltered at all. So many people say, "Well, they're gonna," you might as well expose them to the world now because they're gonna be exposed to it at some point. They need to learn.
Mhm.
But not at like y'all were saying, not at 6, 7, 8, and I don't even think 16, 17, 18.
Yeah. Can I add something to this real quick? This is like real time. What I'm noticing, something that I'm noticing a big difference between any sort of standard schooling system and homeschooling. You and both of your brothers, Dylan, Clayton, you guys have all turned out very entrepreneurial, which I
Hmm.
think is definitely a function of personality. I think y'all, even if you had gone to public school, you'd have a higher tendency towards that than I would or somebody else would. But what
Mhm.
I'm noticing is all of you are homeschooled, and that's a common denominator.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm very entrepreneurial. And it's because, like you said,
You followed a system.
I went to I clocked in from 5. I didn't go to preschool, but I went
Mhm.
I was always a year younger than everybody else. So I was 5 in kindergarten. I was 17 when I graduated, and I clocked in from 8 to 3 and then practiced from 3 to 5
Yeah.
every day for my entire life. And if you go back and look at how the modern school system was developed, I believe it was Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, who was a either steel or a railroad or possibly an oil tycoon. I always get those three mixed up. He helped create the school system to create good employees.
Yeah.
Hmm.
People who clock in, have a structured day, a meal break, and
Mhm.
then clock out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While I think obviously the school system does good and it teaches what it needs to, I think it's gotten kind of to the point where it's overkill. Like Dee was saying, it probably needs to go back to just reading, writing, and arithmetic.
And that only takes until noon. Like, you don't have to
Right.
be in school for 8
Right.
hours. That's wild.
Yeah. That's why
But
I do like some like Montessori schools where they allow some creativity,
Mhm.
while being outside or so just creativity, just different. Just
Yeah.
change it up a little bit. Allow some creativity in there. And then your kids aren't all cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I think there's
I
something to that.
definitely think I think it's just a system, the government, public schools, I think all of it is just a system that creates the same type of people, and you can steer away from that, but I think the system as a whole is just set up to make when you're in high school, in 12th grade in public school, you have this entire class, you choose what school you're gonna go to, what college. There is no other option that they teach you, like, what if you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom? That's not introduced in a public school. It's, do you wanna be a dentist? Do you want to, do this or that? It's a list of jobs. And that's something I do think it was directly correlated, like, our education was directly correlated to the careers that we chose.
I agree.
We
That's what I was saying.
My mind goes to like, this is a nature versus nurture question. Like, is it genetics or is it your environment that shapes you?
Yeah.
When
It's
we
hard to
need
say.
like a longitudinal study, we need to see like
Yeah.
the people who have been homeschooled their whole life, where are they at 20 years from now? And then
Yeah.
the people who have gone to public school their whole life, where are they at 20 years from
Yeah.
now? We need to see if there's any like correlation between,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, self-made businesses and things like that.
Mhm.
Because there's definitely caveats to that rule, like
Yeah.
homeschoolers that are in 9 to 5s and vice
Mhm.
versa. But
Yeah.
you got me curious now. That's all I was gonna say. I need some data behind this.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
would definitely venture to say that I would probably put a little bit of money on that. I think a lot of times the nature versus nurture, it's like I was telling Courtney this the other day because we had another discussion that came down to nature versus
Uh-huh.
nurture. And I think a lot of times it just, it's something to just kind of wax elephant about and just kind of sound smart when you say it. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to, yeah, it's probably a mixture of both.
Mhm.
But in this case, I think I would put a little bit of money on it to say that you would end up with more entrepreneurs and business owners
Yeah.
and
For
self-made
sure.
with a homeschool type system versus 8 o'clock every day. First period's math, second period's chemistry,
Mhm.
and then meal break, and then back to it. Dinner bell rings, and you got
Yeah.
to go clock back in.
Yeah.
But also, our parents created a routine for us. It wasn't a system though. You didn't
Mhm.
clock into school at this hour. Every day was different, but we had specific times for certain things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we had Bible time, alone time, craft, arts and crafts, and then we had science and this and that. But then we would also go places. We had all of these hobbies and activities. And it's just something that you don't get in public school. You have to clock in and then you just follow that system every day for 18 years. It's wild.
Yeah.
And then it's like your life starts at 18. We were working at 15,
Yeah.
14. That's not an option for public schoolers.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
What I've
you get a
heard.
summer
Yeah.
job. That's the reason that
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
phrase "summer job" even
Yeah.
exists, is because you can't. You're in school.
Yeah.
And my dad owned a construction company, so as soon as I had my license, I would go to school, and then when I got out of school, I'd go to work
Mhm.
when I could. But that's not an option for everybody. It's not going to be easy to find somebody that will hire you from 3 to 6, 3 days a week. It's difficult,
Yeah.
like you said, to have a job in public school.
Yeah.
And I know people do, like D said, but I think it's a lot harder when you're stuck in that system.
So last question I think we'll end out with, like, how do you think your faith has influenced, if it has, your career? Does your faith influence how you see your patients, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. I see it as, and I know close family will probably disagree with me, but my perspective is an analogy that I heard a long time ago. Is like, if you're praying for something and you're praying, you're stranded out in the ocean and you're praying for someone to come save you, but you want a cruise ship to come save you, and then this little boat comes by and throws out a life vest.
Yeah.
And you look at the life vest and you're like, well, I'm not going to take the life vest. I'm waiting
Yeah.
for my cruise ship because that's what I prayed for. The life vest, floats away, and then the
Mhm.
next thing happens. So you're missing all these things that might have been opportunities for you to, get saved from being stranded in the ocean. And so I feel like that's my perspective that I see. I feel like God's given us such amazing opportunities to learn about the universe that He's created.
Yeah.
We read in the Bible in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John about these miraculous healings. And I think that 100% God can heal, and that healing is for today. In the same vein, I feel like sometimes there's action required on our part.
Yeah.
And so from like someone being in the medical field, I feel like, sometimes it is a healthy decision that we need to make
Mhm.
instead of not making healthy decisions for 10 years and then praying
Mhm.
for a miraculous healing. Maybe it's, correcting your diet and,
Mhm.
decreasing your blood pressure that way.
Mhm.
And so I think that there's many different ways that we can get like healed. Sometimes it's long term, sometimes it's short term, and that's at least my perspective now. And it could definitely change, but
Mhm.
that's what I've seen. Like I've seen, a lot of people that had really great success from the medical field. Like if they're dying and they need a surgery, I think that the Lord has equipped our minds with the capability to intervene in that way.
Yeah.
It's not the
Yeah.
surgeon that's healing you, it's the Lord gave us the minds to be able to do these things. And so
Yeah. For
um
sure.
like there's different avenues. And like I said, like we hear testimonies all the time about people getting miraculously healed. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you dig deeper into it, there's definitely all these circumstances where it's been medically documented that this was like no other explanation than a
Yeah.
miraculous healing. But there's also been a ton of examples of people getting better, by like, if we want to call it old fashioned medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's all the Lord's work. I think that it's just done in different ways. So
I
For
that's at
sure.
agree.
least my perspective at the moment. And like I said, things can change. I've adapted my thoughts on that over the past couple years, but that's
Yeah.
just where I'm at personally.
Yeah, I feel like that has a lot to do with like the dominion mandate. We are put in charge of the physical aspects of this world.
Mm.
And also it says in Proverbs, like, it's the glory of man to search things out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's saying that's just fallen man searching things out because he can. Like, I think we're supposed to.
Mhm.
I think we're supposed to learn everything that we can about this physical world. We just can't get so sucked into it that we forget that the spiritual world is just as, if not more, real.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
No,
I
I
totally agree
100%
with what
agree.
you said.
Like thinking about being put on this earth and we don't know much of anything. And then like when Newton discovered gravity, like
Oh my word.
that is a law that was set in place, when the Lord spoke the earth into
Yeah.
existence.
Yeah.
We're just at the brink of like all of this information that has been set in place. But like, I think all those things make life interesting. And like, I think that as the Lord, we're made in God's image. He's a creator, you know? And so like
Mhm.
for us to be able to learn about his creation in addition to creating more, I think is so cool.
Right.
Yeah.
It just continues out Romans 2. I think it's Romans 2, where it says, for throughout the entire universe, his invisible attributes, his characteristics are shown through nature. And so, like, they are without excuse.
Yeah.
I'm really misquoting that Bible verse, but I think you know the one I'm talking
Yeah.
about. And it's like the more that we learn in all these areas, you know, the more we learn about the farthest reaches of space, and the more that we learn about the tiniest microorganisms that live inside a mitochondria or whatever. I don't know the size scale.
Yeah.
I'm probably butchering it. But the more that we learn, the more we'll see his invisible attributes shown in his creation. I think it's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
And if, I mean, it all automatically depends on your perspective, but like even things in the medical field, like the Bible isn't a science textbook, but everything it references is accurate
Mhm.
in reference to like what science eventually figures out.
Yeah.
But like even a couple years ago, you have cell adhesion molecules, and basically they hold all of your cells together, and it's just very, very fascinating. One of the cell adhesion molecules, I think it's called laminin, if I'm not mistaken. We got a picture of laminin 2 or 3 years ago, like from electron microscopy. So you can see like these small, small little particles. And if you didn't have cell adhesion molecules, you'd be a puddle of cells. You wouldn't be a person.
Wow.
And the shape of laminin is a cross.
Wow.
Like it's not an X, it's a cross.
Wow.
And so like if you even think about that, like something so small that if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be who you are. And it's held
Mhm.
together. Every cell is held together by a cross.
That gives me chills.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really
So like
cool.
the more eventually science, well, I'm not gonna say eventually, but sometimes science will come around. And
Yeah.
so like I think as a Christian, most scientists, original scientists were Christians.
Yeah.
That's changed now. And
Right.
now it's like completely the opposite. But I think that if
Yeah.
you're a Christian, you can find a lot of science
Yeah.
that backs the Bible.
Yeah, and I
So-
think if Jesus tarries, we'll see that come back around.
Mhm.
I really do. I think eventually ideas like Darwinian evolution will be disproved, and you will see the resurgence of Christian scientists. At least I hope so.
Yeah.
You know, Christian scientists, Christian politicians, Christian artists and musicians. I think that's coming in
Yeah.
the next century or two.
Yeah, I think the only thing I disagree with doctors healing whatever is, you know, Jesus died on the cross to give us healing.
Mhm.
And so I think that whenever you worship something over Jesus, that's really the only time it becomes dangerous. I think medicine is definitely a benefit to us. You know, we go to the doctor. It's not like we're against doctors. I think they were put here to help us. And I think the only time, again, it just becomes dangerous is when you only go to the doctor, you only believe what they say.
Mhm.
Doctors are there to report, you know, these are the facts. So this is what's wrong. And
Mhm.
so if you take that word and say like, "Oh, I'm going to die on this day because I have this," you know, that's idolizing the information. So I think it's really good sometimes to know what you're going through. I'll go to the doctor, you know, see what the diagnosis is, and then I go home and pray about it. I'm not worshiping that and then just going to take that as a fact when the doctor says we don't have a cure for this or whatever it is. You know, you've got to know what you're fighting. I think it's definitely beneficial. I just think you shouldn't worship it. But I am curious, the last thing I'll ask you is like, are you allowed, and you don't have to talk about your personal like school or anything, but as a doctor, are you allowed to practice your faith? For instance, if you had a patient you felt that you wanted to pray over, are you allowed to do that?
It depends on the situation. It depends on the context. I feel like one of the reasons I would like to go into private practice is for that reason, that I would have the
Gotcha.
autonomy to be able to make those decisions. I think the challenging part is that I think thinking through everything, this needs to be the case, because if we mandated that Christianity is the only religion, I don't think that's a Christian perspective,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
So working under an entity like a school or working under an entity like a hospital, they make the rules that you have to follow.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's explicit rules where you can't talk about religion. I think there are rules set in place where like you need to not, in their perspective, dissuade a patient if you say something along the lines that isn't accurate with like medical
Okay.
literature. So like I think definitely you could say like, hey, here's the diagnosis, here are the treatments, can I pray for you? Like I think that's an appropriate
Gotcha.
situation.
Yeah.
But in their perspective, if you were to say something like, "Hey, here's the diagnosis. I'm not going to prescribe you medication. I'm going to pray for
Right.
you right now,
Yeah.
and I'm going to send you home." That
That's dangerous.
in
sure.
in the hospital's perspective or the school's perspective is not accurate medical knowledge.
sure.
Mhm.
And so I'm an employee, and that's my perspective is I want to have my own business, I can run it however I choose to run it.
Yeah.
But if I choose to work for somebody else, I have to fall under their guidelines. I use this
Yeah.
analogy all the time.
Yeah.
If they told me in one of the laws or one of the requirements of having their job that I had to shave my head bald, I might not agree with it,
Yeah.
but I signed the contract saying
Yeah.
that I would work for you.
Exactly.
That's part of the stipulation.
Yeah.
Also, the Bible says obey your government and those in authority. So if you're working for somebody, you chose to work for somebody, you need to follow what they say
Mhm.
and find pockets where you can to still fall in line with maybe the contract that you signed, but also your belief system.
Yeah. Totally
Yeah.
agree.
Okay, last little thing. This is the first time we're doing this, but I want to start a tradition with
Uh-huh.
all of our guests. I'm going to ask you a question just off the cuff. If you had to live in a different era from today, what would it be?
Different era.
Yeah. So when and where?
I would choose the 1800s exploring America. I think that would be a lot of fun.
More power to you. I don't
Cool.
want to be chased by Indians. That's really cool. With that, I think that's pretty much all we got for y'all guys. What are you up to nowadays? Where can people find you? What are your socials?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I've never had social media up until July. Talking to Courtney, she's got me started posting some
hooked.
daily content about my
Yeah.
medical journey, posting on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Every single day.
Every single day. Yep. I think my handle is the same across all 3 platforms. It's Dylan C. Taylor and then the number 1. So you can find
Yeah,
me
we'll
there.
have that link down below. If you guys like this type of content, look out for more episodes every Monday at 6 a.m. We upload on YouTube and Spotify. Leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscribe. We'll see you all in the next one.
Bye,
All right.
guys.
Thanks for having me.